Welcome back. We are here for the April 2026 edition of Trust Your Gut. I am Erin Trent Johnson, transformational leadership coach, here with Dr. A. Antonio Aragona, doctor of Ayurvedic medicine. And my Dr. A is my doctor of Ayurvedic medicine. And we are here at this moment of I am feeling the seasons. I am feeling, as you can hear me with some nasal congestion, but we also celebrated that all this is a little allergy cold. I don't have any other symptoms other than my contact with the pollen and feeling the shift in the season, feeling the shift in the temperature in the air. I think we went from 50 degrees to 90 degrees, back down to 50 degrees within a 1 week period. And so we've had a lot of ebbs and flows that we do this time of year. And Dr. A, I know that we talked about how we can relate to the seasons through the wisdom of Ayurveda, through this seasonal shift in this time. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have you here to talk to us about this.
Hey, good morning. Yes, I'm glad to be here. It's always fun to share these, really amazing, timeless gems that Ayurveda has to offer, that will always be something that could be applied to any given point in time and space, no matter what year it is, what season it is, what season of life it is, etc. Um, and so since we're like in the middle of spring, um, it's just important to understand in general, Ayurveda can never hammer enough, and there's never really a redundancy when it hammers anything to like overemphasizing the basics, which are very important. And so starting off with a shloka, um, you know, it goes Tasya Sita Dhyaya Dharad Balam Vanascha Vardate Yasyur Tusyata Maha Yam Viditam Chestahara Vyaprashayam. And so basically what this is saying is, the vigor and complexion is promoted in a person who knows and follows seasonal dietary and lifestyle regimen. This dietary, includes various types of food articles which are eatable, are eaten, chewed, drinkables and linkables. And the side note with that is Ayurveda understands that what's considered edible, it's considered a food, you know. It's a thing that is eatable, chewable, drinkable, and lickable. So basically whatever you put into your mouth that stimulates the aspect of digestion. In mind, it's also a matter of like what does the mind digest? And mind is always very important factor here. There's many ways to wrangle with, because the mind is, it's an ongoing fluctuation in its own seasonality and can be affected easily by seasonal changes, lifetime space changes, going from like childhood to adolescence to adulthood, senior years. Like this affects mind, digestion follows suit. Wrangling with digestion and getting it stable also can stabilize mind. So they're not mutually exclusive. And Ayurveda is known as for thousands of years, where Western medicine caught up to it about 15 years ago, saying it's got brain connection, it's got mind connection, you know. And it's very interesting to think like, well, what's the seasonality? It's not just seasonality of, the time of life that you're in, but the time of year that you're in, the time of day that you're in. Consider this like a Venn diagram or concentric clocks that overlap. And so you have these rotations all the time at the right at time things are happening, physiologically changing, things changing, the physics changing, all the things. So of course the mind is the one thing that's easiest to be fleeting because the mind is that way. But as we know, is with Buddhist practices and other spiritual practices, you know, um, it's like the center of the storm of a hurricane, tornado is always the still point. And so the mind is the whirling winds that cause the monsoon, the swirling of the hurricane and tornado patterns. But at the very center, there's a calmness. And so it's as the seasonality is shifting and changing, how can the mind be still? And I have a patient recently that went through panchakarma, and she's like, maybe Dr. A, you should kind of like preface the panchakarmas letting people know like they have to have some aspect of strong mind in this process. And I said, well, it's already sifted through and determined. Like ideally, if a person's going through panchakarma, this intense cleanse protocol, everyone's indicated for it. I mean, just it's that easy to say universally everyone's indicated for it, and then which one determines on case by case. But in that aspect, as simply as determining if a person's going to undergo panchakarma, the mind of the person is also assessed. And then, there's some people
Mhm.
that really aren't indicated because of their mind incapacity. And then if, there is some indication, but they need some support, then, this is my job to kind of like help be the second mind strength for them to encourage them to, because once you get to the other side, it's a different forum, it's a different world. And so it's like,
Mhm.
I read it always assesses the mind. The clinician always determines the person's mind and coming in with any of these things. If a person doesn't want to do panchakarma and they just want to do Ayurveda, you know, often a clinician can determine, yeah, though Ayurveda can be very useful and helpful, it would not be practical for this person. This person cannot do it. And you can't be forced. You can't have this magic pill that makes them, they come with the good intention, but when they're like, oh, I don't know if I can commit to this. Like I recently had a patient come in with, certain issues that can include like osteoarthritis and things like that and joint pain. And she's a runner. And, I'm like stage one, stage two, we have 13 months that we can turn a lot of this around, but this is what needs
Mhm.
to be done. We'll do it step by step by step. It was laid out, understood what we're addressing, and then she turned around and said, I don't know if I can commit to this right now, but maybe later. In my mind, I'm like, that's unfortunate. In my mind, it's also sad because I'm like, if or when she comes back, it's going to be worse, which means there'll be more to do. But you can only, bring a horse to water and you can't force things upon people. And it's like, what is a seasonality thing? And so, coming to the classics like Charaka talking about, like daily practices, seasonal practices, dinacharya, that's the daily practice, the regimen. Ratri charya is the nighttime practices, sleep hygiene, etc. Then, you have Ritu Charya, which is the seasonal changes. So all of these things are adjusting slightly because of time, because the body is adjusting to time. And if we're aligned with a lot of these things, there is no disease that can't be managed. Cured, that's a different story. But
Mhm.
managed, Ayurveda can always manage 1,000 times, 1,000%, no matter what. Even when it's like the final season of a person's life, we can address with dignity the person's transitioning, because seasonal transition is,
Mm.
Ritucharya. It's the Ritu of changing a season from the here to the thereafter, right? It's a very profound, situation, and just knowing as simple as what time do I wake up? What time do I go to sleep? What time do I eat? When do I do exercise? When do I have sex? When do I do my work? When do I do things? And, when a person goes away hiking or camping for like a weekend, within a weekend, even for some people, there's a nice natural reset because you're aligned
Yes.
with the moon and the stars and the sun rising and the sun setting and the animals in the background. You're not listening to fire trucks passing by and EMS, EMT trucks. Like it's like there's a whole system reset. And it's the thing that Ayurveda has the most profound relationship with is nature and knowing all of nature, the totality of it, which is everything that's unfolding in this time space continuum. And you know, there's countless tools that Ayurveda can offer. There's countless tools that yoga can offer. That's why even in the yoga tradition, it's like, what meditation should I do? There's a meditation for each person. And as many people as
Yep.
there are on this planet, there's a meditation for each person. It's understanding that. What's the season of that person? And the basics. And it's like you can't even make the basics and see the connection of how like, well, I eat whatever, I eat whatever, I eat however. It's like this, the health connot be rooted in whatever. You know,
That's right.
Pe- people like to be, alive and feel life and feel fluid and connected with whatever, whatever. But to the degree that it goes out of balance, the body will very quickly produce symptoms to tell you you're not aligned now. Like you want to fight against it and be like, well, I have things to do and it's inconvenient. The body will win. The
Yes,
body will
every
take you
time,
down. It will take you
every
down.
time.
And you don't listen to one lesson, you could say, oh, historically I would get a little hyperacidity and I would just take Tums or, something like that. And I noticed the acidity increasing, so I increased Tums, and then I went to the doctor and I got, some antacid, omeprazole or something like that, just to kind of pacify that. Well, what you pacify without uprooting will disperse itself in other directions, and it becomes, why do I have this ongoing post-nasal drip over a sudden? Oh,
Yes.
now my asthma's being triggered, and I never had asthma before. And then it's like, well, now I suffered the seasonal allergies thing. And it's like, it starts to a trickle effect. In Ayurveda, we have what's called the Samprapti, which is the six stages of disease, you know. And there's an analogy that was used by one of my teachers that was like, if you have a spigot, um, out of the wall, and there's a bucket, and if it's balanced, the spigot knob is closed. If there's a leak, it starts with a drip in the bucket, and it's like the first stage of like disease. It's like it's as
Hmm.
simple as like this little trickle, is that little acidity from staying up late, from eating before bedtime at a late time, sleeping in. You have some acid reflux, then you take your Tums and whatever, and then it's like you're pacifying it, but something else develops in stage two. Now the drips start to fill the bucket. Then the bucket goes to the next level and comes to the rim. Then it comes to like overflowing. Then it goes to spreading, and then it goes into catastrophe. So there's like six stages of this process. But it didn't just over a sudden flood the bucket and completely swell the whole area and there's a swamp. It didn't start that way. Most times
No.
it was that little spigot that you're like, instead of like, why do I have this little drip? Oh, okay. I'm staying up late, eating late at night, sleeping in the next day, doing whatever, whenever, however, and what's the season? It's either disease season or health season.
This part and in this, I want to name this is the season you can choose. Like there is choicefulness here, right? I want to zoom in on that because I'm feeling both my own experience of pacification in the past, and also just noticing present like desires to pacify both emotions and also the symptom, right? Like what comes to the surface
Hmm.
at the very beginning. And we were as you were speaking to this, I was thinking about like my desire to reach for the antihistamine, my desire to reach for the thing that is going to suppress this runny nose, that's going to
Hmm.
take away what might cause the postnasal drip, that I know creates a cycle of sickness that I have experienced since I was a child. Like I've only known
Yeah.
allergies. I'm like, okay, it's my season. Like it's my birthday and it's allergy season. I'm gonna be inside. We're not gonna like as much as I want to be outside. I'm going to struggle to breathe unless I have taken nasal steroids and I have a
Mm.
spray and I have
Yeah.
taken my antihistamines. And because we worked so hard, and I'm saying this, like we worked so hard for me to come off of the antihistamines because I had been suppressing my immune system for so many years, 30
Hmm.
plus years. I worked so hard to come off of it going into panchakarma that coming out of it, when my nose started running, I was like, oh no, I can't go back.
Yeah, yeah.
I immediately was like, well, let's get with this neti pot because I hadn't fully trusted the neti pot before. I
Hmm.
hadn't, right? Like, I think that I felt like, well, this saline solution and the neti pot and my Nassia oil, like, cannot do what this antihistamine can do. Like, I need immediate
Hmm.
ability to breathe outside. And I sat with that because I was like, well, what do I really want? What's the wellness? Like I know the potential for this antihistamine, for what it could do to my stomach and what it could do to my digestion. And so I know that this immediate pacification is not going to lead to the long-term, deeper excavation that I need to support my well-being, my health. And that was
Mhm.
hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's
Yeah,
hard.
it's the program because in the West especially it is like, oh, there's this little thing, so just take this over the counter thing, you know. Like in Ayurveda, we can do a similar version of that. The thing is with these little things that we can do similarly, that's the over the counter herb you have in your arsenal of things. It's always
Yes.
contingent on, am I staying up late? Am I sleeping in? Am I eating, crappy foods? Am I exercising properly? Because you can't expect the herbs themselves to be imposed upon with the weight of like the improper lifestyle and diet. Ayurveda hammers ahar vihar, diet and lifestyle. These are the things that contribute to health or disease. It's like these are the hidden things. It's like, oh, how did I end up in this disease pathology? Well, Ayurveda will look at the history and say, how did you arrive at this point today? And there's an interesting thing because um it's like the things that we inherit. So we were born to parents that had predispositions to things. It's sort of the degree of those manifestations of their presentations that as they're copulating and produce the fetus, the embryo fetus, like there's an inheritance already. It's like you're gonna be prone to certain things based on two figures that you were born into. We flip the script and say, if we believe in reincarnation, karma, and all these things, we chose these parents at this point in time. And I don't know, I haven't actually had this conversation with colleagues to really just kind of like have a little bit of a discussion debate about it. But it's almost like if there's this sea of souls that are looming and hovering over people, and if particular parents come together with a certain level of consciousness and they have a fortitude to um, take care of their health and take care of their system so that when they're getting ready to have a child, that's the child that's going to come in. If the parents don't have that level of consciousness and are just kind of shooting in the dark and saying whatever God wants kind of thing, that's the child that's going to come in, right? Just opportunities. It was actually curious. It was this recent scientific thing I was watching reading about where like the ovum chooses the sperm that it requires for its thing. And this is like a new thing that I just saw, and I'm like, that's very curious because in Ayurveda, it's like the beings that are the portals are the ones that invite in whatever the consciousness is preceding. And so it's like so parents can't be blamed, but they can be. The child, if a child comes in and they're born with, jaundice or they're born with, already a skin rash or, some anomaly, this is a karmic thing. This is something from somewhere else. And or, it's like when I have parents that want to be parents after 45, 50, etc. I'm like, I love the desire for it because that's a heart desire, but the seasonality of it, the quality of the sperm, the quality of the egg will be that age. And they can have great diet and lifestyle and exercise, which improves the quality. But a body is still body if it's 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. It's just been on this earth that long and that amount of wear and tear. And, I love the people that are just like, I've been an athlete for 40 years. This is great. If they're balanced and healthy and don't have major issues, this is good. That's more ideal to be physically active. And so what's the seasonality of health and disease? There's so many things that go into it. And so as being a child of a parent that, have pre-existing things, I have an awareness of what those things are. So that in my diet and lifestyle, if I choose to do things that can contribute towards that direction of ill health, then I will get those things. But if I don't know this, then how will I know? I'm just trying to live life and assume that it won't happen to me. Right. This is the common like thought, like, oh, it won't happen to me. That's my parents. And then you become your parents' age, you're like, oh, how's this happening to me? Like this is the irony, and these are the things that are lacking and aren't taught or encouraged in like modern day living of like, well, I understand I'm inheriting certain things from parents. There are certain deficits I might inherit from my mom is 50 and had me at 50, these kind of things. And it's like these are the things that are latent in the background. But in Ayurveda, when we do assessment, we look at all these things. If you're like, oh, something as simple as like, it can be common is a child gets earaches like they're as a baby or a child they have earaches. You see the kid and they're like they indicate like and it's like, well, in Ayurveda, where did that earache come from? It comes from a depletion of certain tissue called rasa dhatu, which means the hridaya, which is the heart, is also compromised, which means immunity is kind of compromised, which means ojas is kind of compromised. And so you're just thinking it's a simple earache that the baby has, but it's like, no, it's starting on this physiological level because this trickle effect, right? So
Mhm.
Ayurveda goes that dissecting. It's that
Yes.
dissective. And it's like never to be like, well, I have a little, you know, as a kid, I always had allergies. That's not a normal state. But it's treated as normal. So you go get the Benadryl, you go get the NyQuil, the Dayquil, all these things, and then you start compounding, putting Band-Aids, Band-Aids, and Band-Aids, and pushing the direct, my baby has a fever. I'm going to give them baby aspirin because it's scientifically proven to be healthy. Yeah, well, that baby became the one that started taking the Advil and the Tylenol and the ibuprofen and then the Zyrtec and then the thing and then the thing and then they're getting acid reflux and they don't know why and then they're getting loose stools, and then all of a sudden they have hemorrhoids because not a loose stool. Like it's like, well, like where did this start from?
Yes. And, I think I want to come back um, to what happens with the daily practice. And I think in the routine, we talked about pacifying, right? And what allows us to actually excavate to get to what's at the root. Um,
Hmm.
as Ayurveda is speaking to the daily practices that help us so that we don't get to that place of pacification.
Yeah.
But for and I think this is important, right, as I'm thinking about also from a leadership standpoint, um, the behaviors that we can have that we can practice that are for pacification to say I can't actually tolerate this right now in this moment. I can't tolerate this emotion right
Hmm.
now in this moment. I can't tolerate it, and I have to have something to make it go away or to soften
Hmm.
it in order
Yeah.
to continue in my life. What might Ayurveda offer us here as a practice?
Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. It's like if Ayurveda is talking about returning back to nature, and like, what does that mean? It's ambiguous because if you're a child that became an adult that grew up to parents that also had an irregular dietary lifestyle practice that they were just staying up and sleeping whenever and they were allowing you because I've met parents that are like, oh, I just let the kid go to sleep when they feel tired and it's just like, no, you should get them regimented, et cetera, et cetera. And um, so it's like, and they didn't know. So you're learning the things from your parents that were passed down to you, but this is you know, um, pranya parada, one of the causes of disease, which is like the misuse of intelligence. But you're assuming like you're following this model. So if I'm following this model, then how else would I know the opposite of that? So it has to be something that's taught to understand. And because Ayurveda is about the basics, and it's like if you start to feel tired around 8 o'clock at night, then go to sleep. Oh no, no, I can't. That's too early because that means I'll wake up at 3 in the morning. Okay. And then waking up at 3 in the morning means you'll be tired to go to sleep at 8 o'clock that night, of course. And it's, swabhava is a term in Ayurveda. It's like the natural state of something occurring. And so this swabhava of I'm tired at 9 o'clock, so I'm going to sleep. And I naturally wake up at, say, 5 o'clock. I go to sleep at 9. The swabhava of waking up. That's the natural state. I went to sleep when it felt like it was my not body's inclination. And, when I woke up, same kind of thing. And it's that subtle, but the mind comes in as it's unruly and as unruly as it is. Oh no, I want to watch TV. Oh, I want to check the email. Oh, I want to work on this project. I want to, and it's like, or I can just wait and do this in the morning. Like, so it's like, how do we get the mind to a point of clarity where which is more sattvic versus, rajasic, which is just kind of like fragmented and, or
Hmm.
the dullness of like the mind, which is tamasic and it's, I don't know, I can't see things clearly. I don't know, woe is me kind of thing. And I don't know how to make decisions. It's just too hard and just can't. Like, it's like this is a seasonality of the mind. What season is it in? And knowing where can I get these tools from? And that's where Ayurveda is like, you have to be educated properly. Yeah. So when patients come in, um, someone has to say to you, no, you should have meals at this time, sleep at this time, exercise at this time, get into a regimen because this 8,000-year-old system is aligned with the seasonality of the cycles of the sun and moon dancing around the earth. And it's, what is it like in the summertime? That's 8 p.m. versus the wintertime at 8 p.m. It's a different season, it's a different quality, right? So it's not easy just to be like, well, a person should just start aligning themselves with the day's cycle. I mean, that's ideal, but they have to know what that cycle is. Yeah, because the doshas govern certain quadrants of the day or sections of the daytime schedule. And if you're in tune, you'll know. But it's like you have to get to that place. But if you're so distracted, how do you drop into that intelligence that's always there? It's timeless. It's not going anywhere. You know, loosely we can say like in Western medicine, the circadian rhythm, right?
Hmm.
Ayurveda is like yeah, let's go deeper than that. And it's understood there's a circadian rhythm. I remember an ex, he was talking about like he liked to be combative a lot. He was like, there's some recent research that shows that being nocturnal for some people is actually a natural state and it's a good thing. I'm like, it's a justified science, and I've seen that article, and it's just justifying bad habits that have adapted to today's lifestyle.
Hmm.
But notice the increase in, neurodivergency and or neurological conditions and tremors and Parkinson's. Let's make the connections of those, through those Western studies to see that. Otherwise, you're just justifying a bad habit because it is not natural to be like, I'm a night owl. It is not natural. I don't care who you are. You're just that deviated. That's the reality. And so it's like, how do you know that? And you're going to be like, well, Ayurveda is not for me because it's against what I wanted to do. Yeah, that's cool. I'll see you in 20 years when you have Parkinson's or MS or some other, condition that you're just like, I don't understand what's happening. Why do I have arthritis? Ayurveda has chapters that start out with, you know, what the doshas look like when they're in their imbalance state and what happens, to each disease is broken down. If you want to get Parkinson's, if you want to get epilepsy, if you want to get, all the things, these precursory things, these prodromal things have to occur first. Staying up late, eating inappropriate portions, eating inappropriate for a person's digestive capacity, eating inappropriate for the season, whether it's 15 years old, 30 years old, like it lays it out. And almost every time when you dissect a disease, it's like, where did they fall in this paradigm that created this thing? And then these
Yeah.
are the things that we have to remediate to start undoing these things that are bigger. It's not just come in and get some treatments and pills. It's like you still have to start learning how to go to sleep at a proper time. So that doesn't
This,
necessarily answer your question directly, but it's like there is no direct answer to that question because it's like who's coming in with what, and it's like how do we get them to go to the basics?
yeah, I think the basics, is where we started. And I feel like it's really important maybe for us to talk about, what are the basics?
Yeah, the basics are, understanding what are the subtle cues of the body. You know, um, we've talked about this called Adharanya Vegas, which are like the non-suppressible urges, the 13 non-suppressible urges. You gotta pee when you have to pee, you have to poop when you have to poop, fart when you have to fart, cry when you have to cry, you know, sleep when you have to sleep, eat when you have to eat, exercise, drink when you need to drink, you know, like burp when you need to burp. Like these are all the basic things, but we're not taught that. It's like, oh, I have to burp and fart. It's inappropriate to do that in a public setting. I'm going to hold it till I'm someplace private. Yeah, then you start causing a disruption in that area. It's that simple. Oh, I can't cry right now, and then you hold those tears in. Or I have to poop, but I'm a teacher and I don't have the time because my schedule is limited, so I just wait till the end of the day. All these basic things. So it's like, oh, I'm hungry now, but I can only have lunch from 12 to 1, but I want to go to the gym, so I'll go to the gym instead of having my lunch. You know, like these are the basics. And it's like, I'm feeling tired, so maybe I'm just going to go to bed early. And then I wake up naturally after 7 hours. And it's like, oh, I can't be up this early. Well, if your body's waking you up this early, then it's time to get up. If you're having this inspiration, it's different if you're like, oh, I went to bed at 9 and I woke up at 1 in the morning. That's that's part of a pathological potential presentation. That shouldn't be the
Mhm.
case. That's just like it's called Kandita Nidra, which is like disrupted or broken sleep, you know. And so it's like that's an issue. That's either some systemic, neurological, inflammatory, digestive, so on and so forth. And that has to be corrected. But if it's like, yeah, I slept 7, 8 hours and I went to bed at 8 for some reason tonight and I woke up at 3 in the morning, then maybe that's the case, and you have to
Mhm.
follow that versus like, oh, I can't go to bed so early. Why? Why can't you? If the body's telling you go to bed, go to bed.
Go to
You know,
bed.
if you're
Trust.
tired all the time, that's a
Trust.
different thing. Then it's like that's another thing. If it's a natural, like I had a full day of work, did all the things, exercised, ate the meals, and now it's the end of the day and I'm winding down, I feel tired and I feel it more in the winter than I do in the summertime, then follow that natural state, and understand like how disconnected are you from nature? Because the more you're focused on
Yeah.
TVs and laptops and tablets and phones and games and all these things, you have to know that this is having quite a drastic, extreme impact on the system. Oh, but sitting in nature is boring. Oh, is it though? Why is it boring?
I was gonna say, do people say that? I know people
Oh
say
yeah,
that. I just
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
I'm just like, that's my dream
Well, it's like
time.
people go to the woods with headphones on and they're listening to all these things and they're going for a run in the middle of the woods. I
Yeah.
would rather go for a run in the woods and listen to my feet hitting the ground and the rustling of the leaves in the background with the chirping and the cicadas and like the wind blowing and just kind of like hearing the water running. Like there's plenty to drop into. Oh, that's boring. Okay. Then, this is pathological. The, and I
Well,
was,
I want to pause you because I have to pause you here. We're going to have some disagreement, especially it's around the use of the language of pathology.
mm,
And so I do struggle with um the language of pathology. And I struggle with that with like the Western medical model
mhm,
of something is inherently wrong or this body mind is deviant from a norm. And I feel
mhm,
like the idea that some brains might be more bored than others is it feels very close to that pathologizing language and action, and it functions
mhm,
to separate some brains from others. So why I do want to bring that in because I feel like that also creates um a barrier for entry for people to try,
mhm.
because then there's this immediate message that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I mean that makes sense. And it's like we could say, if it's, maybe a more benign synonym would be like ideological, right?
Hmm.
Because in Ayurveda, it's understanding, certain, there are people are just different. Like, and this is like, are they more governed by Rajas? Are they more governed by Tamas? Are they more governed by Sattva? Is there more presentation of Vata, which is more of a creative type, or does a person that has Kapha is also more creative? It's like determining like if that's their natural inherent state. Like first, it has to be determined, is this naturally inherent for this person? So this is why like Ayurveda is not a one size fits all. It really is a microscope
Hmm.
that goes into like the finest magnification, really like understand like Some people might have this creative ability. You might be an artist. Some people might have more right brain versus left brain functionality of things. So that's not pathological, right? It's
Right.
it's to the degree that that person's individually understood in their wholeness from this Ayurvedic assessment that determines, is this ideological? Is this pathological? Because also, the more of any one thing, even in a natural state, will be the thing that gravitates towards the thing that creates more factors of ideology and pathology.
Hmm. And
It's always the more of that. If a person is always like,
yes.
if there's a person that's opposite of like having this creative mind, and they're just very like Winnie the Pooh-ish all the time, very calm and just very sedentary and very slow and just very kind of like methodical, but take their time to make decisions and you know we'll say that it has more kapha tendency, more tamasic tendencies.
Hmm.
They're going to be more prone towards tamasic, kaphagenic, kapha producing symptoms.
Yes.
It's the more of that. So this gets a little bit more technical, but and don't want to spend the time getting so technical with it. But in Ayurveda we have Prakriti, Vikriti, but the place in between Prakriti, Vikriti is Vikrita. And so Prakriti is like the person's natural biological state, basically, the inherent like configurations of the elements, their doshas, we'll say, and it's like their configuration of the doshas in the Prakriti state is like their natural state. Vikriti is when they're in pathological processes. Vikrita is more like those doshas that went from Prakriti are now starting to slowly deviate in a direction where if it's not corrected by seasonal changes naturally with like one season going to the next and your symptom might have resolved, going from this like subtle like, oh, this is a little bit more than what should be normal for me, to like, this is definitely abnormal. Now I'm creating these conditions and now it's going into this avalanche, right? So it's understanding like where is a person at any given point in time. So understanding a person's individual state, like what is their likeness, what is their type, but also knowing that in this tendency, they're going to have more of a tendency towards this. This is what they're predisposed to if they're
Hmm.
doing this in excess, you know.
Yes.
And then
This.
Ayurveda also has the foresight of like, because we don't just want to deal with like how did a person get here with the disease or something that's out of, equilibrium, but it's also like, where are they going to be 20 years from now if they don't do these particular things? Because it's like 20 years from now, I might see the person coming in with Parkinson's, but if they saw me 10 years ago, I would say, well, you're in the direction of this particular pathology, and this is how it's looking because X, Y, and Z, one plus one, one plus one plus one, one plus one, you know. So that takes off, it gives accountability, and it also
Hmm.
honors the person in like where they're at. If they're the creative type and they're the artist, yeah, they're the ones that might stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning because they're harnessing. But the yogis knew, the Buddhists knew, Tibetan Buddhists knew. If you actually wake up earlier after proper sleep, you have the best concentrated potency of creativity.
Yes.
And you're harnessing that from the energy of the day itself, from the cosmos, from the alignment of the planets and the solar system relationship. It's not staying up late using the reserve tank to try to propel you and then getting depleted and wondering why you're having aches and pains and joints and da da da. And it's really aligning with the day. But no one teaches this. So then how do they know?
I think that this is so important, and I can speak to, my own experience of um, being able now to wake up naturally at 4:45 a.m. Every time it happens, I'm like, is something wrong? Nope, I'm ready to be awake. I'm
Yes.
ready to be awake.
Yeah.
And this period of time, as I go through my morning routine and wash my face and brush my teeth and scrape my tongue and see something auspicious and see the sunrise and do my meditation and stretch and exercise and journal.
Mm-hmm.
That very slow process, because it's also very slow because I have the spaciousness to be slow in that, but also look at all that happened before I even speak to another human, and all
Mm-hmm.
the creativity just pours. Well, just as I take my walk, right, and I
Mm-hmm.
put on my shoes and I hear my feet hit the ground. I actually was journaling the other day and writing a bit about the sound of the crunch of my shoe touching the
Hmm.
ground and what that gives me. And I do want to speak, I want to also acknowledge that that very much has been my experience. And uh, when I have noticed the ways that I want to avoid, or if I want to put on music, right, while I'm running, or if I'm, especially if I'm taking a walk in the trail. Um, and sometimes it is to connect with the beauty of the music in the environment. But then sometimes, to your point, yes, sometimes it is, I want to avoid feeling.
Hmm.
And so there's something that I want to avoid feeling, even in the presence of all this beauty.
Yeah.
And so there is an invitation for awareness, right? That I could be bored, but really, actually, I'm regulated enough at that point. If I'm regulated enough at that point, then in
Hmm.
fact it's not about boredom.
Hmm.
It's about what am I trying to avoid feeling,
Yeah.
because the feeling of it might feel like it is too much. And so my practices for emotional regulation are key here.
Hmm.
So I think that the leadership lesson that I'm also taking from these basics, the basic
Hmm.
practices, are to pay attention. You know, this is our consistent conversation that we will have and that I have with folks, is about paying attention to our body and noticing our needs. And that can be the work
Hmm.
of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, and so that work is also teaching your body that you are trustworthy.
Yeah.
I am trustworthy because I am paying attention and I'm noticing what is here right now in this
Hmm.
moment. What do I need? And what might I need that I'm avoiding, and
Hmm.
finding some other pacifier. Um, and that practice alone is enough.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to speak that out as I'm hearing um, both my own experience and lessons in this, and then
Hmm.
also what might be lessons for folks as they're dipping their toe in, and wanting to try an
Yeah.
Ayurvedic way of living.
And I can come up with 1,000 ways to try to, because every email I send as the initial email, it's like this is a journey, and it's not a linear one.
Yeah.
That's
No.
there's no linear way. I've not seen anyone come in with a linear way. It's a windy road, and depends on how windy it gets. And as my one patient said with PK, like you have to preface, like you do require some strength in mind. You require some, and everyone comes in with certain mental atrophy. And so that's just a consequence of modern day living. And so it's understanding like how to lasso them in and slowly, you know, some patients need more hand holding than others. And it's just because of so many different factors. And so then if they really are committed by heart, then it's like, you give it 6 months to a year, it will change. I've seen it so many times, and it's like it takes time. And also knowing like it's in the society that we live in today, it's all about trying to be like wanting to feel good all the time, and the discomfort of any little capacity. And I read what called sukumar, means like they're very weak um in mental capacity. They're very fragile. And so you can strengthen anything that's fragile. It just takes time and diligence and just determination. If you just have that much, then it takes time, because we're not taught to be strong. The smallest little thing, we take a pill because we don't want to feel uncomfortable. And it's okay to be, you know, and like on your Shanti treatment sessions, he says, be comfortable with the discomfort. Like you have to be in it, So if you expect a person to sit down that's never done anything except chaos and drama, you expect them to sit down and meditate and sit in silence for 10 minutes, you're going to be sadly mistaken. And it's going to be disappointing to the person who's like, I've heard about meditation. I just can't do it because it's so uncomfortable because the mind is panging. Then you start doing it with like little techniques in the background. Focus on your breathing. Do a mantra, do a mala, do a prayer in the background. Play some music that's subtle. Set up, so many things, because a person can't go from 0 to 100 if they don't even know what that looks like, and they only hear like this is what it looks like when you're at 100. No, it's gonna frustrate people and be like, oh, meditation's not for me. Meditation can be for everyone. It's like, what is the meditation? What's the right
That's right.
meditation? And then you build on that because there is an eventual goal of meditation that you're supposed to, meditation is defined as an uninterrupted flow of awareness on one object of consciousness. So it's the ability to keep the mind focused on one thing. But you can't just do that if you're not used to that. And I was talking about this at my a recent gathering. We went from like 2.5 minutes of focus in the past 15 years to 9 seconds. A person can't hold focus longer than 9 seconds, let alone memory retention. This is a weakness of the
Hmm.
mind. Now we're relying on things. One of my friends and colleagues, she's a naturopath, and we were talking about this, and she's like, yeah, when I hang out with certain friends and they try to like pull from memory certain things, they want to go to Google to look it up. And she says, how about you pause, really sit with trying to get the information from your own mind before you decide to use Google? And I was like, I love that. Some we were
Mm,
together at this gathering, you know, it was a challenge to all of us to, instead of looking up every little thing, can we really extrapolate from the mind? Like,
yes.
this is what we need more of, not less of, because we're relying on Chat GPT to direct our things, and we rely on AI and rely on Google. But then we make ourselves more mentally weak and incapable of memorizing and understanding. Like, I can think for myself.
I could think for myself, and also I can slow down the pace to know
Yeah,
that I don't have to be a computer and that it may take me a little bit more time to recall.
yeah,
And I might even need help. And I might
yes,
need to say out loud, what are the words that are helping me get to the word that I
yeah,
want? And that is an invitation for pause. And
yeah,
it's an invitation for presence with the discomfort of not being able to get your words out immediately
yeah,
and to be with any of the shame or the parts that
yeah.
might feel judgment towards that.
Well, everyone has this
And
handicap. It's because when we think on a neurological level, and this is a neuroscience, it's like as you're creating, memory and recall, it's developing certain pathways in the brain that allow you to have access to the information that you're fortifying with these kind of things. And when a brain is misfiring all the time, it's not going to have the capacity to draw the information back because it's misfiring. But if it's slowly and stored properly, you can access it properly, and that's a slowdown. It's not a speed up. Then then when you do it as a strengthening exercise on the other side, then you're quick to remember things, but you have to slow down to learn to absorb and retain and then access. But if you're in a chaotic state, you won't ever have access. And this is a chaotic world. Everything is just very quick fixes, multitasking, flip, 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 click, 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 tap, tap, tap. And it's like you won't have, and then you can't think, then you wonder why you can't make good choices. So we'll leave
well,
on that note, the seasonality
yes,
of health and the seasonality of disease. And on many levels, it is a choice. And on many levels, we don't know we have a choice.
that's right. But I think that the one of the takeaways that we have today is to slow down and to be present, to feel the choice that's available to us. Um, well, I want to thank you, Dr. A. Where can folks find you?
Yes, stillpointayurveda.com. You can find me. I'm available through telehealth. I'm available in person, globally. There's no time zone I can't work with.
Wonderful. Well, we are excited to come back in May. And I will have cleared this mucus. I've already manifested it. I've called it. I've claimed it. We're going to clear it with these herbs and my and maintaining my dinacharya, my daily routine for health and choiceful living. So
Yes.
have a great rest of your day, and
Yes.
we will
Thank
see
you.
you
And you
next month.
too. Yes.
Thank you.